My name's Linda, I'm 61, and last night my own son beat me over a bowl of soup. I ended up on the kitchen floor wiping my blood with an old rag, while he went to his room and slept like nothing happened. As if hitting his mom was the most ordinary thing in the world. If you're listening to this, please like the video, subscribe and drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. This morning my body ached, my arms were covered in bruises, and my lips split every time I spoke. But the worst pain wasn't physical, it was the shame. The boy I raised with so much love now sees me as nothing more than a maid. I got up at 5 just like always. Ryan was already at the kitchen table in a sharp gray suit, scrolling through his phone. Without looking up he barked, "Breakfast. Hurry, I've got a meeting." Not a word about last night when he called me useless and said that if I weren't his mother he'd throw me out. I made his eggs with cheese, toast and black coffee, every detail exact. If anything is off he explodes and I'm the one who pays. While he ate, the front door opened and his wife, Brittany, walked in wearing a green dress and heels. She kissed Ryan, sat at the table and gave me her fake smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," she said sweetly, the way she only does when he's listening. I wanted to tell her the truth, that I woke up bruised and broken, but instead I forced a smile and said I was fine. When I asked if she wanted breakfast, Ryan shot me that warning look. One wrong word and tonight would be worse. Then with a fake smile he handed me makeup. Perfect for those little scrapes from when you tripped last night. That's what he calls it, little scrapes. As if I tripped on his fist. The foundation cost more than $50, probably bought with my own retirement money since he controls all my accounts. I haven't seen a dime of my pension in 2 years. Brittany's eyes sparkled with admiration. "You're so thoughtful, honey." If only she knew. After breakfast, Ryan tied his red tie, grabbed his briefcase and whispered in my ear, "Remember what we talked about. If you tell anyone you'll regret it. Nobody will believe a crazy old woman." Then he left with Brittany, holding hands like the perfect couple, climbing into his brand new black sedan, bought with my money. When the house grew silent I cried. Not from sadness but from rage and helplessness. I know I can't live like this anymore, but I don't know how to escape. I sat for hours in the kitchen watching sunlight crawl across the tiles, remembering that I bought this house 30 years ago with decades of hard work at Anderson and White law firm. This place used to be my sanctuary. Now it's my prison. It started 3 years ago after Ryan's first divorce. He showed up with a suitcase saying he was broke, that he'd lost his house and needed somewhere to stay. I opened my door and my heart, never realizing I was letting the devil move in. First things seemed normal. He worked, we had dinner together, even shopped for groceries. I thought maybe we'd finally have the mother-son bond one dreamed of. But slowly the criticism began. "Mom, the food's too salty. Mom, clean better. Mom, your clothes are embarrassing." Then he moved into my finances. "At your age you shouldn't handle money. Let me help." Like a fool I gave him access. Within 6 months my pension went straight into his account. He handed me $20 a week like pocket money. When I asked about the rest he'd say, "I'm investing it, trust me." Then came Brittany, 25 years younger, ambitious, with a dazzling smile. They married within 6 months, in a wedding that cost over $100,000. My money, of course. Since she arrived things only got worse. Ryan began ordering me around like a servant. "Mom, cook something elegant, Brittany's used to fine things." "Mom, scrub the guest bathroom, important people are coming." "Mom, wash this shirt by hand, it's too expensive for the machine." And I always obeyed because I was terrified he'd follow through and throw me out of my own home. Even though the house is legally mine, he had me add his name to the deed just in case, like it was some kindness. The real violence began a year ago. Little things at first. A shove here, a pinch there when I didn't move fast enough, muttered insults about how slow and embarrassing I was. Then it got worse. Slaps when dinner wasn't exactly to his taste, hits on my shoulder, punches to my back if I wasn't cleaning quickly enough. Last night he crossed a line I never imagined. It was Tuesday. I'd made our light vegetable soup the way we always do. I set the table, served the toast, brought the steaming bowls to the table, and he sat without greeting me. He took one spoonful, his face changed, and he spat the soup back into the bowl. "What the hell is this?" "No salt, it tastes like water." I said I was sorry and that I'd fix it, but before I could he stood up like a wild animal, grabbed the bowl and threw it in my face. The hot liquid burned my cheek, a porcelain shard cut my lip, and he grabbed my arm so hard I knew the bruise would stay. 40 years working as a secretary and you can't even make soup," he screamed, then shoved me into the kitchen wall until stars danced behind my eyes. He kept hitting me, my ear buzzed for hours. He told me between strikes that Savannah, his wife, was bringing friends for lunch tomorrow and that I'd better make everything perfect or he'd kick me out. Then, like he always does after the violence, he softened. He helped me up, wiped my blood with a napkin and crooned, "I'm sorry, Mom. I get frustrated. It's for your own good." Then he went to bed as if nothing had happened. I stayed up all night cleaning soup and porcelain, each little shard feeling like pieces of my dignity. My lips still bled, but the worst was how small I felt, that the person I loved most had become my abuser. As I scrubbed, I thought about how this all started. He was sweet as a boy. When his father left us, I worked double shifts so he'd have what he needed. I enrolled him in the best schools, paid for lessons, bought whatever he wanted. Maybe I spoiled him. Maybe I taught him that everything comes easy without respect or effort. At dawn, I heard his footsteps and froze, heart pounding the way I always do when he's near. He came down in a black suit, checking his phone, and didn't even ask for breakfast. He sat and waited while I served his eggs, toast and coffee in silence, as if I were invisible. At 7:30 his wife came in, Brittany, in a tight yellow dress and heels that sounded like hammers. She looked radiant. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," she said with that plastic smile. I lied like always and said I was fine. I noticed her glance at my swollen lip and the bruise at my collar, but she looked away and returned to her phone. Ryan finished eating and reiterated what he'd said the night before. Make a special lunch, seafood, pasta, Caesar, good wine. And spend money he handed me like charity. 3 $20 bills for everything. He leaned in and whispered, "Put on that makeup I bought. Cover the marks. Don't let them notice or you'll regret it." I nodded, hands shaking. They left together, kissing like a perfect couple, and I sank into a chair trying to figure out how to turn $60 into a feast and how to survive another day pretending everything is fine. So many mornings I've woken up just to cover bruises and invent excuses. I tripped on the table. The closet door hit me. I fell on the stairs. Lie after lie, all to protect my son's reputation. That morning I went shopping with Ryan's $60, stretching every cent. I bought frozen shrimp instead of fresh, the cheapest decent wine pasta on sale. At the checkout I ran into my neighbor Margaret, a kind widow in her 60s. "Hello, Linda," she said warmly. "Haven't seen you outside lately." I told her I'd been busy, but her eyes lingered on my lip through the makeup. "Did you hurt your mouth?" My heart raced. "Oh, just bumped into the closet door," I lied. She frowned but didn't press. "If you need anything, you know where I am." Her words nearly broke me. It had been so long since anyone showed real kindness. For a moment I wanted to confess everything, but Ryan's warning echoed. "If you open your mouth, you'll regret it. Nobody will believe you." Back home I cooked like mad, scrubbing the house, setting the table with my best china and flowers. By noon, Brittany and her friends arrived, dressed like they were heading to a runway. "Hello, Mrs. Miller," Brittany said sweetly. "These are my friends. Beatrice from HR, Brenda from marketing, and Emily from legal." My heart almost stopped when I heard that last name. It was my sister, Emily Carter, whom I hadn't seen in years. She looked just as shocked, but she instantly played along. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Miller," she said formally, reading the situation at once. I served the meal: shrimp pasta, salad, bread, even a small tiramisu. They chatted about work and weekend plans while I played the perfect hostess. But Emily never stopped watching me. Her eyes searched my face, my every move, the way she used to when we were kids and I tried to hide something. "The food is delicious," Beatrice said. "Did you cook it all yourself, Mrs. Miller?" I forced a smile. "Yes, I love to cook." Brenda chimed in, "Ethan's lucky to have such a devoted mother-in-law. Hard to find women so dedicated these days." Brittany smiled proudly. "It's true. Mrs. Miller takes care of everything. Like having a housekeeper but with love." Her words pierced me. That's what she saw me as, not a mother, just free labor. Emily cleared her throat. "And what did you do before, Mrs. Miller? Were you always a homemaker?" For the first time in ages I felt a flicker of pride. "I worked 40 years as an executive secretary at Anderson and White law firm. I retired 3 years ago." Emily's eyes lit up. "I know that firm. They have an excellent reputation." I smiled genuinely. Yes, I met judges, prosecutors, top lawyers. Mr. Anderson always said I was indispensable. Brittany shifted uncomfortably. She didn't like the spotlight on me. Well, now Mrs. Miller is retired and enjoying her rest. Ethan takes care of everything, her finances, her needs. He's such a responsible son. Emily's gaze locked on mine. She knew something was wrong. He always could. Emily kept her eyes on me and I knew she'd sensed something. When I slipped into the kitchen to get dessert, she followed. Need any help? She asked, but I could tell she just wanted a moment alone. No, everything's fine, I said, avoiding her gaze. Then she whispered my real name, Linda. Are you okay? You seem different. For a second I almost broke down. I wanted to hug her to tell her everything. But I heard Ryan's keys at the front door. He was home early. I'm fine, just tired, I muttered quickly. Ryan walked in wearing that perfect smile he saves for company. He kissed Brittany, charmed her friends and placed his hand on my shoulder. I tensed and he squeezed harder, a silent warning. She's the best mother in the world, he said while his fingers dug into my skin. After dessert, the women said their goodbyes. Emily was the last. She shook my hand and said loudly, "It was a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Miller." But in a whisper she added, "We'll see each other soon." Once the door shut, Ryan's mask dropped. "You did well," he said coldly. It wasn't a compliment, just confirmation I'd played the obedient servant. As I cleared dishes, he reminded me, "The technician's coming tomorrow to check your computer. You've been browsing strange sites." My blood ran cold. I didn't even own a computer. I only used his. The only strange sites I'd visited were about abuse shelters and helplines. He knew I'd been searching for help. Then my phone rang. It was the accountant from his company again. "Mrs. Miller, please come at 3 this afternoon. It's urgent." I glanced at the clock, 2:15. Ryan was upstairs napping. My chance. "Yes," I whispered. I grabbed my purse and slipped out, heart racing. The office tower downtown was all glass and steel, intimidating from the street. I had never been inside before. On the 18th floor, the receptionist led me to the accountant. A man in his 50s introduced himself. David Collins, general accountant. His serious expression made my stomach twist. "Mrs. Miller," he began, opening a folder, "we've discovered transfers from company funds into your bank account. Money that was then withdrawn." I froze. "That's impossible. I don't touch my account. My son manages everything." "I know," he said gently. "That's why I called you. In the last 6 months, Ryan has diverted more than $50,000. The funds went through your account. We need you to file a formal complaint to clear your name." My chest tightened. Not only was I a victim at home, but now I was an unwitting accomplice in his crimes. "What will happen to him?" I asked. David's voice was firm. "If you file, he'll face charges of embezzlement and fraud. 5 to 10 years in prison." I left in shock, wandering the downtown streets for hours. My son, not just abusive but a thief who'd used me as cover. When I finally returned home, Ryan was on the couch watching TV like nothing had happened. He looked at me sharply. "Where were you?" "The house was a mess after lunch." For the first time in years I met his eyes. "I was at your office." His face shifted instantly, the mask cracked. "What did you say?" "I spoke to the accountant, Ryan," I said, my voice steady. "I know what you've been doing. $50,000. $50,000, I said, my voice steady. "You've stolen it from your company using my bank account." Ryan stepped toward me, but for the first time in years I didn't back away. Something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was knowing others finally knew the truth. "Listen, you stupid old woman," he hissed. "That money's mine. You owe me for everything, the food, the roof, the clothes." "With my own pension," I snapped, "the savings I earned from 40 years of work." He grabbed my arm, but I shouted, "Let go of me." The sound startled him and he released me. For 3 years I had been silent. Now I wasn't. "You're crazy," he muttered, but his voice cracked. "No one will believe you." "The accountant believed me," I shot back. "The documents prove everything." He froze, then threatened again. If I filed a complaint, he'd destroy me. He said he'd throw me out of my own home, that I'd die alone. But this time his words didn't break me. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I told him and realized it was true. He raised his hand to strike, but the doorbell rang. It was Margaret, my neighbor. Linda, are you all right? I heard shouting. His hand dropped instantly, he couldn't risk a witness. Behind her stood my sister, Emily, dressed casually, pretending not to know me. I'm new in the neighborhood, she said politely. I hope we're not disturbing you. Ryan appeared with his polished smile. No trouble. Mom just burned dinner. You know how older women get. I could feel Margaret's doubt. She handed me a casserole. Remember, I'm right next door. Emily locked eyes with me and added, anything you need, day or night. When they left, Ryan slammed the door. Tomorrow we're going to the bank. You'll sign whatever I tell you, retract any complaint, say it was all a mistake. No, I said firmly. His rage flared like I'd never seen before. Then he grew eerily calm. Fine. If that's how you want to play, you'll wish you were never born. I barely slept. At 3 a.m. I heard a noise outside and peeked through the curtains. Margaret was crouched in my yard, setting up a small security camera hidden in the bushes. He knew. She was protecting me. The next morning was gray and rainy. Ryan was up at 5, moving through the house, whispering on the phone, plotting. When I came to the kitchen, he was already in his sharp black suit, looking every bit the successful executive, not the monster I knew. Good morning, Mom, he said in a syrupy voice that made my skin crawl. I poured his coffee. I've been thinking, he continued, buttering his toast. Maybe I've been too hard on you. You're my mother, you deserve respect. His words were so out of character I knew it was a trap. Then he revealed it. We'll go to the bank today. You'll clear up this misunderstanding. You'll say you authorized all the transfers. I won't do it, I answered. His smile vanished. Of course you will, because if you don't, very unpleasant things will happen. He leaned close, his voice cold. This house, this table, the food you eat, it's all here because I allow it. And if I stop allowing it, he didn't finish, but I understood perfectly. Ryan leaned back and pulled out his phone. I've been thinking of calling some doctors, he said coldly. Ones who specialize in dementia. You know, it's so sad when mothers start making up stories about their own sons. Savannah already knows how confused you've been. Her friends noticed too. Lies, all of it, but he was so convincing I almost doubted myself. That's how his manipulation worked. Twisting my reality until I questioned my own mind. So we're going to the bank at 10, he continued. You'll dress nicely, smile, and sign everything they put in front of you. Understood. I mumbled yes, hating myself for my weakness. Before leaving, he warned, don't even think about leaving the house or using the phone. I'll be back at 9:30. The moment the door shut, I collapsed into a chair, shaking with rage, at him but more at myself. Then a soft knock came at the back door. It was Margaret, whispering urgently, Linda, open up fast. She slipped inside, eyes sharp. I heard everything. The camera by your window caught it all. The threats, the blackmail, every word. You have proof now. My heart pounded. What can we do with it? She smiled. I have a friend at the district attorney's office, Brenda Johnson. She specializes in cases like yours. But you need to come with me right now. Fear gripped me. I can't. If Ryan finds out, Margaret took my hands. Listen. If you go to that bank and sign, not only will he keep abusing you, you'll also be considered his accomplice. But if you come now, we can stop him. I looked at the clock, 8:30. He'd be back in an hour. I felt the truth of her words. I grabbed my purse with my documents and left with her. For the first time in 3 years, I felt courage rising. At the DA's office, Brenda greeted us with calm authority. She listened to the recordings, then said firmly, your son has committed multiple crimes. Domestic abuse, fraud, blackmail, obstruction of justice. With this evidence, we can arrest him today. But I need you to file a complaint. Are you ready? It was 9:15. In 15 minutes Ryan would return, furious to find me gone. But I said, yes. I'm ready. Brenda smiled. Good. While you sign, I'll coordinate with the police. By 10:30 her phone rang. The police had arrested Ryan at my house, raging and smashing everything. He's in custody, Brenda said. The charges are serious. Bail is unlikely. Relief washed over me. For the first time in years, I knew I would sleep without fear. Back at my house, the place was a wreck. Broken dishes, ripped cushions, family photos in pieces. Margaret whispered, horrified, how could he do all this so quickly? But I knew. I'd seen his blind fury before, usually aimed at me. Brenda took photos of the destruction. This will help show the judge exactly who he is. As we cleaned the shattered glass, my phone began to ring with an unknown number. Brenda put a hand on mine. Don't answer. Brenda was right, the missed calls were from Ryan. His voicemails were desperate, his voice shaky, almost childlike. Mom, please get me out. It was all a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt you. You know I love you. Don't let me rot here, I'm your son, your only son. 5 messages, each one more pitiful, ending in sobs. Brenda explained calmly, it's part of the cycle. First threats and violence, now guilt and victimhood. He wants you to feel sorry for him. I understood, but hearing him cry still tore at me. For 35 years he'd been my baby. Separating that boy from the monster he'd become was almost impossible. Are you okay? Margaret asked softly. I nodded, though the truth was complicated. I know I did the right thing, but he's still my son. That night, Margaret insisted I stay with her. Your house isn't safe, she warned. Ryan still has friends and Savannah might try something. She gave me her daughter's old room, a small, cozy space with a twin bed and desk. It's yours as long as you need. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. No footsteps in the hall, no midnight screaming, no blows. Peace itself felt strange, almost frightening. The next morning, Brenda called. Ryan's bail hearing is today at 2. With the evidence we have, release is unlikely, but I need your testimony. My stomach clenched. Do I have to? Yes. The judge needs to hear in your own words why he's dangerous. The courtroom was small, tense. Ryan sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, glaring at me with contained rage. Savannah was in the back, looking elegant but exhausted, shame flickering in her eyes. The judge, a serious man in his 60s, reviewed the documents before speaking. Mrs. Miller, he said, tell us what you've endured these last years. I took a deep breath and told it all. The beatings, the financial control, the threats, the humiliation. My voice cracked, but I kept going. When I mentioned the $50,000 he'd stolen, I saw Ryan stiffen, fury flashing in his eyes. Ryan's lawyer, a slick young man in an expensive suit, kept trying to interrupt, but the judge shut him down each time. Then the judge turned to me. And what did your son tell you yesterday morning regarding your testimony? He threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent if I didn't lie for him, I answered. He said he'd throw me out on the street with nothing. The judge put on headphones and listened to Margaret's recordings in silence. When he was done, he looked straight at Ryan. Mr. Ryan Miller, the evidence shows a clear pattern of domestic abuse, financial fraud, and intimidation. Considering the seriousness of the charges and the danger you pose, your request for bail is denied. You will remain in custody until trial. Ryan exploded, shouting, "This is an injustice. That crazy old woman is lying. I'm a respectable citizen." Guards held him back as he screamed, "You'll regret this, Mom. When I get out, I'll make you pay for every day I spend here." His threats echoed through the courtroom, proving exactly what I'd said. After the hearing, Brittany approached me nervously. "Mrs. Miller, I need to talk to you." Brenda and Margaret stiffened, but I signaled it was fine. "What do you want, Brittany?" I asked. Her voice trembled, but for once it was genuine. "I want to apologize. I knew something wasn't right. I saw your bruises, I heard the screaming. But I was scared. Ryan threatened me too, said he'd ruin my career and reputation. I let you suffer because I was afraid to lose my comfortable life." Tears filled her eyes. "Yesterday when they arrested him, I found documents in his office. He wasn't just stealing from the company. He was stealing from my personal account too. We've been married 2 years and I never knew." "And now?" I asked. "I'm filing for divorce immediately. I've already spoken to a lawyer. And I'll testify against him. I want to work with the DA's office to make sure he pays for everything." Leaving the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. That afternoon, Brenda shared more news. "The company wants to settle. If you cooperate by returning the stolen money, they won't pursue charges against you. And as recognition that you were defrauded, they'll pay you $20,000. $20,000? I whispered. It was more than I'd had in 3 years. "And your house?" I asked, remembering Ryan's threats. Brenda smiled. "He lied. The deed is still in your name only. He forged papers, but legally the house is yours. For the first time, the chains he had wrapped around my life began to break. For the first time in a long while, I actually began to picture a life without fear. A life where I could make my own choices and truly own my days. But I knew Ryan wouldn't give up easily. His threats at the hearing made that clear. This was only the start. 3 weeks after his arrest, my life had shifted, but I still felt trapped. Even safe at Margaret's house, I was jumpy all the time. Every sound woke me. Every car outside sent me to the window. Unknown phone numbers gave me panic attacks. Brenda told me it was normal, that years of abuse don't vanish overnight. They called it PTSD. My body had learned to live on alert, she said. It would take time to heal. And then came the messages from jail. The first was a handwritten letter in that handwriting I knew too well. Dear Mom, it began, enjoy your little victory. You think you're brave for betraying me. But this isn't over. I know things about you no one else knows. Secrets from your years at the law firm. Things that could ruin your reputation, even put you behind bars. My heart dropped. Secrets? What could he mean? For 40 years at Anderson and White law firm, I'd handled confidential files. Yes, but I had never meant harm. Yet the letter named a case, Walker versus State, and accused me of hiding and altering documents to help a client years ago. I remembered vaguely, a tough case, about a drug with dangerous side effects, and Mr. Anderson had told me to reorganize some memos. At the time I thought it was part of my job. I never realized the legal consequences. Now Ryan claimed he had copies of the altered files. If you don't drop the charges and apologize publicly, he wrote, I'll send those papers to the DA and the press. You'll be the headline, 61-year-old secretary arrested for covering up drug deaths. He signed the letter with a threat and listed how he would destroy me. Media contacts, journalists who'd pay for the story. My hands shook as I read it. Margaret found me with the letter and called Brenda right away. Brenda read it and said flatly, this is blackmail. But she was practical. We need to verify whether his claims hold any weight, she told me. What do you remember about the Walker case? I told her everything I could recall. The memos, the instructions to remove certain documents, how Mr. Anderson had asked me to rearrange files. I had always trusted him and I had trusted my job. Brenda worked quickly. She explained that even if the documents existed, intent and context mattered. You didn't profit, she said. You were doing what a boss asked. We'll have to review any papers he says he has, but we'll also show how you acted as a subordinate employee, not as someone seeking to obstruct justice. Still, the letters got to me. Ryan's aim was clear. Make me doubt myself, make me fear the law and the press, and push me into backing down. That's how he'd always operated, gaslighting and intimidation until I obeyed. But this time I wasn't alone. Margaret stayed beside me. Brenda kept pushing forward with the deal. And most important, I had already started to feel the small, stubborn shift inside me. A willingness to fight back rather than hide. Ryan could try to frighten me with old mistakes, but he couldn't erase everything I'd been or everything I still could be. Here's the rewritten, tightened is almost equal to 10% shorter. First-person version in plain American English, smoothed for natural voiceover delivery. I kept the emotion, stakes, and key facts, but cut repetition and made sentences flow for narration. For a moment I froze when Brenda asked, "Did you know that could be illegal?" I didn't. I'd only been following orders. Mr. Anderson told me it was routine to protect client confidentiality. Brenda sighed. Legally, ignorance isn't an excuse. If evidence was altered even without criminal intent, technically a crime occurred. My world fell apart again. Just when I thought I'd escaped Ryan's control, he'd found another way to threaten me. What do? I asked. If I drop the charges, he gets out and he'll kill me. If I don't, I could go to jail for something I did 15 years ago without knowing. Brenda was steady. First, breathe. Second, we'll find out exactly what documents he has and how he got them. Third, we'll work to minimize any legal exposure. Then it became a nightmare of investigation. Brenda pulled together a team to review the old Walker case files while I lived in constant terror, waiting to be arrested. Margaret was my rock during those dark weeks. She took me in, listened to me cry, made chamomile tea, and reminded me I wasn't alone. We'll face this together, she told me. But inside I still felt like the scared woman Ryan had forced me to be. A week later the second letter arrived, crueler than the first. He'd written that I hadn't learned and attached photos. Pages of internal memos from Anderson and White with my handwriting, margin notes, altered dates, missing pages. He warned the pictures would hit the papers that night unless I visited him in jail and signed a letter withdrawing the charges. Then came the worst, recordings. "Did you think I didn't know about the cameras?" he wrote. "I have tapes of you taking cash from clients. Tax evasion. 15 more years." This wasn't just blackmail anymore. It was full psychological warfare. He'd prepared for this, gathered evidence, and planned how to break me. When Brenda read the letter, she got very serious. "Linda, I need the full truth about your time at the firm. Anything you did that was odd, any money you received off the books." I told her everything I remembered. The memos I moved, the instructions from Mr. Anderson, the way I trusted my job and didn't think about legal consequences. Brenda promised to comb through the records and prove context and intent matter. That I'd been a subordinate following orders, not someone trying to obstruct justice. Still, the fear settled in my bones. Ryan wanted me to doubt myself, to believe the law and the press would turn on me. But Margaret and Brenda stood by me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a stubborn spark. A small, fierce readiness to fight back instead of hiding. For a long time I sat there stunned when Brenda asked, "Did you ever know that could be illegal?" I hadn't. I'd thought the cash bonuses Mr. Anderson gave me at Christmas were personal gifts. I'd taken occasional tips from grateful clients for extra help. Cash I never reported because I didn't know I had to. "How much are we talking over 40 years? Brenda asked. I lowered my head. "Maybe $1,000, I said, ashamed. Brenda did the math fast. With interest and penalties it could come to roughly 40,000. And technically it could look like tax evasion. My son had built a perfect trap. Report him and he'd destroy me with my own mistakes. Don't report him and he'd keep stealing and abusing me." Brenda paused, thinking, then offered a third option, a gamble. "We get ahead of him," she said. "You voluntarily confess everything before he can use it as blackmail. We turn your confession into proof of his manipulation. If he's already exposed your secret, he loses his power to frighten you." It was terrifying, admitting crimes, risking shame, maybe facing charges. But it would strip Ryan of his main weapon. I stared at my empty, ruined house across the street. It held my past, my errors, and also my chance to be free. "Let's do it," I told Brenda. I was exhausted from living in fear. She smiled. "Tomorrow we'll surprise him." The day came quicker than I expected. Brenda organized a press conference at 2 where I would publicly own my mistakes. It was risky, but it was our move. I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Ryan's arrest, I wasn't scared. Margaret helped me dress. A sober gray dress I'd worn to the firm, and a little makeup so I wouldn't look like the woman everyone expected me to be. "Are you sure?" she asked again. "Completely sure," I answered, surprised by the steady sound of my voice. I'd been a prisoner for 3 years and I wouldn't be one more day. At noon, Brenda called with surprising news. "Linda, Michael Turner, Ryan's boss, wants to speak with you before the press conference." I sat up. Why would his boss call me? Brenda's voice was steady. "He asked to meet. He says he wants to apologize and he may have more information helpful to your case." Michael Turner was the man who uncovered Ryan's thefts, the same man who turned pale when he saw the trail. I didn't understand why he wanted to meet me, so Brenda arranged it in her office. Michael was in his 50s, gray-haired, and had a presence that made you listen. He stood when I walked in. "Mrs. Miller," he said, warm but serious, "I want to apologize. If we'd noticed the red flag sooner, maybe you wouldn't have suffered." He surprised me by saying the thefts didn't start 6 months ago. They'd been going on 2 years, tiny at first, then growing more deliberate. My heart dropped. Michael told us the total, about $130,000, routed into accounts Ethan controlled, including mine. I felt sick. I hadn't just been abused at home. I'd been an unwitting part of a long, systematic theft. There was worse. When legal dug deeper after the arrest, they found forged reports, altered contracts, and even sales of confidential information to competitors. Then Michael said something I never expected. The company wanted to hire me. They'd reviewed my 40 years at Anderson and White law firm, my references, and they needed someone who understood how those files worked to help rebuild what Ryan had ruined. They offered a job, $4,000 a month, benefits, and a $50,000 payment to compensate me for what I'd lost. I couldn't believe it. 3 times my pension and a lump sum that could change everything. But there was a condition. I had to testify at Ryan's trial. Without hesitation I said I'd do it. At 2 o'clock the press room was full. Reporters, cameras, microphones everywhere. Brenda had told the local media a victim of domestic violence would make an important statement about blackmail. Sitting in front of those lights I felt a different kind of fear. Not fear of Ryan but fear of freedom. Freedom meant responsibility and choices I'd let him steal from me for years. I looked into the cameras and spoke clearly. My name is Linda Miller. I'm 61. For the last 3 years I was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of my son Ryan Miller. Then I told my story. The beatings, the control, the theft, the threats and the blackmail. The room went silent. Pens scratched, cameras rolled. Then I spoke to the women watching. Emotional blackmail, financial control, threats. These are abuse. Don't let fear of judgment keep you trapped. Freedom is worth more than reputation. Afterward, Brenda told me the DA's office wouldn't press charges. My confession, combined with Ryan's blackmail, made me far more valuable as a witness than a defendant. That night, for the first time in months, I slept in my own house. Margaret stayed beside me to help me feel safe. Lying in my bed, I felt something I hadn't in 3 years. Full control of my own life. Ryan was still in jail, facing charges that could keep him there for years. His blackmail no longer mattered. My phone rang, a call from the jail. This time I wasn't afraid to answer. Mom, Ryan's voice came through hollow. I saw your press conference. And what did you think? That's calm. You destroyed everything, he said, not with anger but with deep sadness. You destroyed my last chance. No, Ryan, I answered. You destroyed it the moment you chose to make me your victim. Silence stretched on the line. Finally, he asked, will you ever forgive me? Someday, I told him honestly. When you take responsibility, when you seek real help, when you understand what you did. Maybe someday. But I'll never forget. I hung up and switched off the phone. Tomorrow I'd start my new job, my new life. But tonight I wanted only to rest. In peace, in safety, without fear or blackmail. For the first time in 3 years I was truly free. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments.